All right. Well, happy, beautiful, amazing evening. Bob Rakowski here and Diane Solano. Bob is from Houston. Diane is from Toronto. Diane, you want to kick off this amazing call?
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's fabulous conversation. And I have to say, it's a fairly new conversation. As many of us on the thread already know, Dr. Bob Rakowski is one of the world-leading health experts when it comes to natural medicine. He is the founder of the Natural Medicine in Houston, Texas, and he's an international lecturer for many different companies, big nutritional companies around the world. He's the doctor to the doctors. So he teaches and lectures for practitioners like myself and many others on this call joining us tonight. With no further ado, I'm going to welcome Dr. Bob on this fabulous call. He is definitely partnered with two other health leaders in the cannabis industry, Mr. Dave and Christy Gallagher, who are the founders of Growing Healthcare 420. And together, we've had recent conversations and realizing there was a huge synergism between the two. And Dr. Bob decided to pull up his sleeves, as he always does, gets this research done, and is going to share with us some new information, conversations that have never really been had before. But the world is opening up to new ways of taking care of your body for multiple reasons and multiple ways. I'm honored to be one of his students. And with no further ado, welcome, Dr. Bob. Thank you for doing the work and spending this time with us tonight.
Well, Diane, thank you always. I'm going to tell you that my time was really well spent. And if people, were short on time, here's what I'm going to tell you. There's a powerful and proven synergy between cannabis and coffee. If you've ever been to Amsterdam, you probably know that they actually sell cannabis in coffee shops, and it's probably a match made in heaven. Cannabis and Ganoderma are both really powerful superfoods with lots of proven health benefits over thousands and thousands of human years. And here's the final point that I'm going to make. There's a probable synergy, and all the data points to it. But believe it or not, I only found one study that had Ganoderma and cannabis both in it, but they didn't even study it synergistically, but they both helped with wound healing. So when I share the data, I'll let you draw your own conclusions, but I'm very convinced that there's a powerful synergy between Ganoderma and cannabis and coffee. So Diane did a great job sharing my background. 31 years in clinical practice. I've had the experience of treating world champion athletes from every major professional sport. And I've also seen the other end of the spectrum, people that were sent home to die. And I've taught doctors over 10,000 hours of continuing education seminars on 6 different continents.
My fucking video
so,
up there.
Hey, guys,
what the fuck?
Ron, we're going to kick you off the meeting, bud. We heard you about that. So maybe we can get someone to edit that. But anyways, all right then. So here we have it. So little bit on my background. So little further back, this is 1972. That's my amazing and wonderful family, but Midwestern family, family values, Catholic upbringing. There was no way in heck that cannabis was ever going to be talked about in our household, except that you just better not ever touch it. So, when you start looking at that type of background, my parents were influenced by a lot of the information that was out there. And by extension, so was I. So looking forward, I literally listened to both audiobooks, Jesse Ventura's Marijuana Manifesto, Steve D'Angelo's Cannabis Manifesto, watched multiple TED Talks, multiple professor talks about the endocannabinoid system, and read, no less than 50 articles on cannabis. And I'm going to agree with Jesse Ventura's statement on the cover of this book. Subtitle, How Lies, they lied about cannabis, they lied about its safety, they lied about its efficacy, they lied about the detrimental effects, which, by the way, many researchers have said no one has ever died from cannabis overdose. Corruption, well, follow the money. There was a lot of money being taken away from, and Jesse calls it out, and Steve calls it out, and plenty of TED Talks people call it out. Plenty of money being taken out of the pharmaceuticals industry's pockets because cannabis was good for so many things. And then propaganda, propaganda promoting the lies and the corruption. And I'm going to make that statement rock solid after putting some good hard work into looking at what's real. So this was one of the TED Talks, and Mara Gordon is, a really good researcher. She had a failed back surgery, and she said she became addicted to pain pills. And she said she had no benefit. She was zombied out of her mind. She had pain 8 of 10 every day, and the doctors just wanted to throw more pills at her. And finally, someone said, why don't you try this cannabis stuff? And she said, you've got to be kidding me. Instantly, her pain went from 8 of 10 to a 2 of 10. And I love this talk. Rachel Knox is a medical doctor. She, growing up, both her parents were medical doctors. And she says, I want to be a medical doctor. And her mother said, Rachel, you might want to rethink this. This medicine is probably not what you think it's going to be. And she says, you know what? She was so close to walking away from medical school because she couldn't believe what they were teaching. The answer was always in a pharmaceutical. And ultimately, she enrolled in a more natural medical program with a double major in business. And she says, I got to tell you, we didn't know anything about the endocannabinoid system, but it is a phenomenal and powerful system influencing nearly every single bodily function. So when you start looking at cannabis itself, notice what it says, the plant of 1,001 molecules. So here's what I can tell you. They've done a lot of research on this plant. And to try to isolate one molecule and say, hey, this is the molecule that makes cannabis either really, really good or really, really bad is a bunch of bogus. Why would you not look at all of them, all 1,000 molecules? And that's really the basis of natural medicine. And several researchers call this the entourage effect. Over 100 different cannabinoids identified, and that's really just the tip of the iceberg with how powerful and well-known this plant has been. And again, millennia. We're not talking about centuries. We're talking about millennia of safety and efficacy. And it was only in the last 100 years that this plant was villainized. So coffee and cannabis, phenomenal synergy. Add Ganoderma to that, and we'll show you what we will likely get. So we go back to 2009, and as far as I know, this was the first time they studied caffeine and cannabinoid receptors. And here's what it said. Caffeine sensitized the neural connections, the synapses of the cannabinoid receptor, and that would make it more receptive to stimulation by endocannabinoids. So I went to Amsterdam in the 1990s. And again, I was just absolutely amazed that all these coffee shops were selling cannabis. I was still, remembering my conservative upbringing and asking, how could this even be legal? The coffee shops were full and people knew the obvious synergy. So now we start looking at caffeine again, and we see that it'll enhance GABA, interestingly enough, calming, glutamate, and dopamine, and especially 2 things, glucose-6-phosphate dehydrogenase, that's a little bit technical, and dopamine were most elevated, but dopamine is that neurotransmitter of pleasure. So dopamine is associated with increased alertness and happiness. And notice what this says. The combination of cannabis and caffeine greatly increased dopamine in the brain. That creates an individual with a brain that's alert, happy, and driven. But let's go a step further. This glucose-6-phosphate dehydrogenase increases the rate of all neuronal activities, and that's going to lead to mental arousal, alertness, and increases in performance. So, I've got plenty of musician patients, and it was basically part of their warm-up to do cannabis. Either when they were creating, which they found more creative, or when they were performing. And here's what they said. The music sounded better. Everything flowed better. And we're going to go to that word flow in a moment, because this is a buzzword that has a ton of research behind it. And so first and foremost, THC will actually mimic anandamide. Now, that may be a fairly new neurotransmitter to you, but they actually call this the bliss molecule. Incredible joy and peace is stimulated by that THC. So again, if you were the pharmaceutical industry, would you want people experiencing bliss where you couldn't control it? Think about that for a moment. Think about antidepressants, anti-anxieties, which, by the way, cannabis is known to be good for those things as well. But back to this concept of flow. Stephen Kotler's a flow researcher, And he would study all these people in these profoundly peak states that were doing the absolute impossible. And what he found out was their brain had the perfect cascade of neurotransmitters: norepinephrine, dopamine, anandamide, serotonin, endorphins, and oxytocin. You put those together, you will be laser sharp focused, you will be profoundly coordinated, undistractable, in the zone, with body, mind, and spirit all working really, really well. And you have that wonderful level of bliss that goes with it. And that's why these people crave this flow state, even though they're risking their life. Now, you can get in flow state a lot of different ways. You don't have to risk your life, but pretty interesting there. So when we look at these top 10 health benefits: fights cancer, prevents diabetes, treats inflammation, helps depression, helps gaining lost appetite. That's really good for cancer patients. Treats glaucoma, helps in weight loss, useful for autism, increases lung capacity, and helps with chronic pain. Those are all proven benefits. I'm not going to go through the PubMeds of those because we want to talk about coffee being synergistic and Ganoderma likely being synergistic. So if we go to Ganoderma and cancer, at least 15 different types of cancer Ganoderma is proven against. That includes breast, prostate, inflammatory breast, leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma, cervical cancer, melanoma, lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, colorectal cancer, liver cancer, glioblastoma, endometrial cancer, gastric cancer, bladder cancer. But I also believe it's a universal anti-cancer, because a study out of MIT showed that if you could find a way to stimulate both aspects of the immune system, you'd have a greater killing effect. And Ganoderma does that. So imagine, I have patients that have said, Dr. Bob, the way I beat my cancer was with cannabis. People have come in and said that. And I have 30 plus years with Ganoderma. And I can tell you, I believe every cancer patient that I've ever put on Ganoderma has done dramatically better than their prognosis ever indicated. And many of those people survived. When we look at Ganoderma and diabetes, over 100 medical studies going back over 30 years, and a number of mechanisms by which it's really good for diabetes as well as for fat loss. Next on the cannabis list was inflammation. Well, Ganoderma modulates the inflammatory process by over a dozen proven mechanisms. And then finally, when we start talking about depression, I'm going to share a couple things. Ganoderma is really good for the brain. It enhances serotonin, that's happiness, GABA, which is calmness, acetylcholine, which is memory, and dopamine, which could be focus, extreme joy, and or even fine motor control. Ganoderma, by the way, also buffers cortisol. Now, that's very, very powerful, because what we know, and Diane, I know you're, an information, guru, like I like to be as well. That's a May 2022 study. This study finally came out. We knew that Ganoderma was really, really good for stress. Well, now they know that it actually decreases serum cortisol. And that's a huge factor in buffering stress. And on top of it, it improves brain-derived neurotrophic factor and helps both serotonin and norepinephrine. Then in animal studies, they would take, rats, and they'd put them in essentially an abusive circumstance. They'd put them with a mammoth bully rat, and they'd have this rat just beat it up all day long and steal its food and torment it. Well, when they gave them Ganoderma, you know what? They were, not depressed, interestingly enough. So, if life's beating you up, consider a little more Ganoderma. And again, Ganoderma improved happiness and satisfaction and reduced depression. And it has a number of mechanisms of fat loss, including appetite reduction. So here's what I want to tell you. We know that marijuana actually increases appetite. Ganoderma reduces appetite. Maybe the two combined would get rid of, that appetite or munchie increase that people have. So we're halfway there. Cannabis and Ganoderma fight cancer. They both reverse diabetes. They both can modulate inflammatory process. They both help with the depression, probably by multiple mechanisms. They're both really, really good for appetite. And now we get to the other half. Ganoderma, I did not find a single study that said that it was good for glaucoma, but it actually prevents death of the eye cells, which one of the more common causes is macular degeneration. So we have to add together a few different references to get this to make sense. But if you and I see this beautiful girl on the left, if we had macular degeneration, she might look like what we see on the right. So here's the first thing I'm going to tell you, that they say Ganoderma spores will inhibit this photoreceptor apoptosis. Now, what are photoreceptors? That's actually what you are going to see with. And these are the things that actually suffer apoptosis or cell death in macular degeneration. So Ganoderma prevents this photoreceptor apoptosis. That's the cause of death in macular degeneration. So do we know that it could be protective against the eye? Absolutely, we do. Ganoderma supports fat loss by a number of different mechanisms. We've got people that have lost over 100 pounds just switching to better products. If we had a longer Zoom about the endocrinology of body fat gain, we'd realize that there are a lot of factors in there, and nicely, all of them are buffered or even undone by Ganoderma. And one of my favorites is it's a very powerful thyroid support nutrient, and the causes of hypothyroidism can all be unwound by Ganoderma. So I've seen plenty of thyroid patients get a lot better energy, better mood, better everything, better metabolism with Ganoderma. When we start looking at autism risk factors, there's a lot of them. And I did a full Zoom that actually shows that there are published medical studies where Ganoderma can affect every single one of these risk factors for autism in a positive way. I'll stick with toxicity for a moment, because Ganoderma is proven against some of the worst toxins in the history of the planet, like things that always would cause Parkinson's or liver failure or death to the pancreatic cells producing type 1 diabetes, or even severe neural tube defect causing death or paralysis. Ganoderma powerfully protects the body from all of these horrific toxins. And then guess what? We deliver it in coffee and tea and hot chocolate. And this is Dominic DeVille, and long testimonial. We can't claim any health benefit, but here's what she said. She said, my autistic, anxiety, panic-ridden, ADHD defiant child wants to work as a shoe salesman when he didn't want to interact with anybody before. And all of that changed when he started drinking Ganoderma infused hot chocolate. Cannabis is great for the airways. Ganoderma opens the airways by more mechanisms than prescription inhalers. And a fun testimonial here.
Hi, my name is Wendell Betts, and it will be 3 years ago this Sunday that I actually received my first order from Organo. At the time, I was severe COPD diagnosed. My lungs were at 23% capacity, and 2 months before I joined Organo, my pulmonary doctor actually told me that nobody has ever recovered from 23%. That the next time I get sick, I would either end up intubated the rest of my life or I would die. I said, I'm not going to go on a machine that's not living. So in August, late August of 2013, somebody gave me some samples of Organo. 21 days after I started drinking the product, I came off of oxygen. That was September 15th, 2013. I have not taken oxygen since. My lungs went from 23% to 29%, 34% to 40%. And now this summer, I'm able to walk 3, 4, 5 miles at a time without any type of assistance. So Ganoderma works. Dr. Bob knows all about it. He's a fantastic guy. I love his videos, and he's asked me to do this. I am not getting paid for this. I love Ganoderma. I love Organo Gold. Try it. You will not be sorry. Thank you.
Dr. Bob, the video on that was very, very low sound. So maybe you can just...
Hang on. Let me pause that. Say that again, Diane, please.
Sorry, the video sound was very, very low for the viewers. So maybe you can succinct it or whatever you think is best.
Well, yeah. So Wendell Betts was actually interviewed by MSNBC. He had chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and he was put on oxygen, and the doctor said, you'll never get off oxygen. You're going to die. And you know what? He started drinking Ganoderma infused coffee. And within 21 days, he was able to get off of oxygen, and his lung function went from 20% to 30% to 40%. And his pulmonologist said, gosh, I've never seen anything like this. What in the world are you doing? So very, very powerful. Ganoderma helped him. And sorry that audio didn't come through. That might be worth putting in the group because it works really well. Finally, we start looking at pain. Ganoderma is great for the pain of things like fibromyalgia and even rheumatoid arthritis. And by the way, that is where cannabis really shines. Chronic pain, anxiety, different things like that, it's really, really good for. So now we start looking at the probable synergy. Are we good for glaucoma? No, but phenomenal for eye health and preventing macular degeneration damage. Great for weight loss, phenomenally for preventive and can help autistic patients. Increase lung capacity, helps with chronic pain. And we'll finish where we started. There's absolute synergy between coffee and cannabis. And by the way, plenty of people that were talking about that said, it's like Red Bull and vodka. No, it's not. Red Bull's crap, vodka's crap. One's an upper, one's a downer. You got a plant with 1,000+ molecules, another with 400+ molecules and all the fabulous 50 nutrients, top superfoods, creating phenomenal synergy in all healthy ways. And then there's a probable synergy between Ganoderma, cannabis, and coffee. And I'm excited for the future of these wonderful molecules and people that are open enough to put it to the test. And I always tell people, don't take my word for it, try it, see what you see. So now we can transition to questions.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. If anybody has any questions around any of the two topics at all tonight, this is your chance to ask one of the leading experts. Feel free to type it in chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, you are welcome to do so. I know we have Christy and Dave on the call. I'm mistaken their iPad, it's actually them. So if there's anything you want to add or any questions amongst your community, Christy or Dave, for your growing healthcare community that have also joined us tonight. I know you guys have spoken very highly of the reishi infused coffee because you've noticed that it really does add to that big repertoire of health care that you offer as well to your client base. Feel free to share as well.
Yeah, hi, thank you everyone for joining. Hold on, I'm sorry. I had feedback. I think I have to leave.
You must be on Instagram. It's notorious for that.
Okay, so sorry.
You fixed it.
I had my Zoom on my phone as well, so I'm on both. So I apologize. I had feedback there. So thank you. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you everyone for joining that saw, it was kind of a last minute as far as the announcement, and we had a really great response. And so I want to thank everyone for joining. Also, so much appreciation for Dr. Bob. Thank you for putting this presentation together. Thank you, Diane, for helping us organize. I was really, really excited. I kind of was like, I don't know if if anyone wants to do this topic, but I was really excited to hear when Diane said, yeah, Dr. Bob is all about it. So thank you for doing such a wonderful presentation. I'm going to go back and watch it like 100 times and learn a lot more from just what we've shared tonight. So, and then anyone from Growing Healthcare, I had thrown out there that if you have a question and you interact in the live tonight, then I will send you a free sample of any beverage. So make sure to put your questions either in the chat or unmute yourself and ask away. This time is ours. So take advantage of the time and the knowledge that is up in Bob's head over there.
Yeah. Leave a question in chat.
Dave and Christy, I want to thank you. You opened my eyes to a lot. I'll tell you what, I recommend the books, the Marijuana Manifesto, the Cannabis Manifesto. That was 23 hours worth of listening, probably another, 15 hours of TED Talks, scientific lectures. This is profoundly well validated.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I stumbled across it all, like we've started in Organo about 4 years ago, drinking the coffee and just consuming it, and it was part of our healthcare routine. And then we added cannabis as well, and it's just been very synergistic for us. And so I was like, I know there has to be a correlation, and bada bing, bada boom, you just PubMed it and you can find what you need pretty much. So I was really excited about it, but I really appreciate your presentation tonight for sure.
So Dr. Bob, we do have some questions from the community. Sio Bathen has put in what exactly is the connection between cannabis and coffee. Literally loved all the info. As I scroll up, there's more questions. Maybe we can start answering some of those.
So, well, Natalie asked this question: how do you recommend people consume cannabis? So I don't think smoking would be the ideal, putting something hot in your lungs, but I'm going to go to Dave and Christy on that one. How do you recommend that people get cannabis?
It's kind of individual. So, there's different methods that work differently for everyone. So, for those who don't want to smoke, edibles are a great option. There's tinctures that you could do subliminal or sublingually under your tongue. That's a great option. You can also do topical, especially for pain relief. Your skin is your biggest organ and it absorbs very, very well. And, if you put CBD or THC cream on your skin, wherever those joints are hurting, they can go directly to there. There's also places like your belly button, between your toes, things like that absorb really well. So, there's a lot of different applications. So it really just kind of depends on what you're going for and how acute your body responds. Some people do better doing like a vape, which is just a distillate of the flower. So you're not burning an actual flower. It's just the oil, that vapor. That's another way that people consume it as well. So from smoking to tinctures, there's something for everyone. So just kind of exploring and see what works best is my recommendation.
I want to share a story from the Cannabis Manifesto, and the gentleman that wrote that. His mother had extreme, or maybe it was his stepmother, extreme Alzheimer's, and was in extreme pain. And he said she would moan and wail at night. He said he had no idea what was going on. She was just moan and wail. And he says, I would bring her over the pipe, and after she had her first hit of marijuana, it stopped really, really quick. And then every time after, he'd bring the pipe, and he says, and the way he described it was just beautiful. It was heartwarming. He said, she would go from wailing to this peaceful smile on her face, and she'd take that puff, and then within moments, her whole being became peaceful. And anybody that would block people suffering from that type of relief, you know what? There's got to be some way that the world, you're gonna reap what you sow. That's just beyond horrible. If people can get that level of relief, and that's where people were getting it for years. They actually called it compassionate care for end stage patients. Now, you start looking at the data, and every state that legalized cannabis has had a significant drop in opioid use. Significant drop, every single state. So it's not an accident. Jackie asked how much cannabis is safe. So I heard it at least 10 times. No one's ever died from cannabis overdose. And then other people would say, you take these students, and let's say they go out drinking until 3 o'clock in the morning. They have to get up the next day and go to work. It's never going to happen. They go out on a cannabis party. They come in at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to work the next day, and they have one of their best days. So profoundly different experience there. So.
Yeah, and really, there's different levels of consumption. It really, again, goes back to what you're needing it for. A lot of times I find microdosing is a really great way for people to get just what they need. You don't need to be incoherent. You just need to get a little bit of relief, or just to feel a little bit more joy, and just to bring you up to balance. And so microdosing is a great way, especially if you're just starting off with cannabis. Start low and go slow. Take 1 or 2 hits, or just a very small bit of an edible, or 1 or 2 drops of a tincture, however you're consuming it. Start very, very low, less than what you think you're going to use, and give it time. Especially if you're an edible, it's got to get through your entire digestive system before it's going to take effect. So depending on your metabolism rate is going to be when you get that effect. So sometimes people can take too much edibles because they're like, oh, I didn't feel anything. They just needed to wait a little bit longer, and then you get this big compounded effect. So, and one thing I always like to say too is, for people who are sensitive to THC and actually don't want that feeling, CBD can help reverse the effects of THC. So if you ever do overconsume to where you're not comfortable, make sure to have some CBD on hand so that you can bring yourself back to where you want, because they kind of work together in that way.
I see a question. What exactly is the connection between cannabis and coffee? So in 2009, there was a published medical study that showed that the caffeine, it specifically said caffeine, but substitute coffee in that word, sensitized the cannabinoid receptors and therefore made the body more responsive to cannabis. So, you know, coffee would make a little cannabis go a lot further with that said. And so, you know, people figured that out. That's why if you've ever been to Amsterdam, I don't know that I saw a single coffee shop in Amsterdam that didn't sell marijuana. Every one of them did. So, you know, and that was in the 90s. So they figured it out long ago. And then someone finally did the study. Someone asked, is there a difference between homegrown and factory grown? Probably. Cannabis has gotten to be a really big industry. And here's what we know. You need to have quality. And one thing that they've said is they've literally created hundreds, and that was plural, hundreds, and maybe it's even thousands of hybrids that didn't exist before. And what's amazing is there are people that can create good, clean, amazing cannabis. And the other option is the illegal stuff that's unregulated and comes from God knows who, you know, people that maybe don't have your best interest in mind. And that's where cannabis got a really bad name, because some of the stuff that came up from Mexico was laced with other intoxicants. It wasn't the cannabis that did it. It was the garbage they put on it. Cannabis by itself, again, clean, safe, effective, thousands of years of human clinical use. Just in the last 100 years, did it become taboo. But the world is waking up to a lot of things. Someone else asked, is cannabis good for sleep? The answer is it can be, right? So I'll go to Dave and Christy on that, but different strains good for sleep, other strains the opposite. So you got to know what you're getting.
Yeah, kind of like what you're talking about with that ensemble effect, that, you know, it's not just one molecule. Like you said, the plant has 1,000+ molecules, so they're all working together as kind of an ensemble. And so it's not just one thing that's making it better for sleep or not. So traditionally, you think indicas are for sleep, sativas are for energy, but it really boils down to a lot of the terpene values as well. So different strains could be an indica, but be high in a terpene, such as limonene, which is very energizing. So that's where the hybrids come in too, where you kind of have like an indica that's energizing. And so you can get a lot of different interesting customized strains. And then the other thing to think about too is the time that it's harvested affects how the has a role in the effect. So if you harvest really early, it's going to be more of a young, fresher plant. And so it's going to have more of that energizing effect because the terpenes haven't degraded all the way yet. As the plant ages, so if you let the plant age and it's older, then it's going to become more sleepy. And so going back to what you were saying, because that THC molecule actually converts to CBN, and I can't remember the actual name of it, but CBN is a molecule similar to CBG or CBD, that is very good for sleep and pain. It's a sedative, seizures. It's a great anti-seizure molecule. And so the THC actually converts to that CBN when it gets older, and that's what makes it more powerful for sleep. So you could have a sativa that was very energizing, but because of the age of the plant, it could have a sleepy effect. So again, knowing what you're getting, where it's coming from, where your source is very important with cannabis. You know, if you're a home cultivator, you can customize that. You know, you can take your plants down at whatever age you like them and have the effect that you like. Or if you're a caregiver, you can design that for your patients as well and make sure you're harvesting the plants at the time that they prefer it. So there's a lot of factors that play into it. So that's not just a one thing that makes it or break it, but for sure, you know, the terpene values and the harvest time play an effect on sleep and how the plant works.
I think also the way your body receives all of that in the endocannabinoid system, you know, also affects how it will work for you when you're sleeping or when you're wanting to be awake as well.
Yeah, the environment that you consume in. Environment is a big factor when you're consuming THC. So if you're in a social environment where you're, you know, engaged and there's a lot of stimulation, then it will work in that way and encourage that. But if you're kind of ready to go to bed and you're sleepy and your body's ready to go to bed, it's kind of an adaptogen in that. So environment plays a big role in the effect as well.
Amazing learning curves, Christy and Dave. I know a lot of the organo community that are already drinking, the reishi infused coffee, because they're so health driven and always looking for more alternatives, more information. They're all chiming in, asking where they can get a hold of you. I know now you're part of our community. So guys, if you want to know Christy and Dave, we can definitely connect you guys for more questions and answers, and vice versa. For those of you that are part of Christy and Dave's community, they have partnered as brand partners with us leading health experts, because they realize this isn't just your regular, Starbucks, Tim Hortons, McDonald's coffee. This is coffee on steroids, because in this coffee, there's the Ganoderma lucidum. That's the secret sauce that is playing that synergism with the cannabis and the reishi. You've got rocket fuel. So they're both enhancing that health performance, that sleep performance, that pain performance. So this is where there's a lot of synergism. And that's why our community in the rocket fuel organo is looking for people like Christy and Dave to have conversations with, and vice versa. If you guys are curious about samples, reach out to Christy and Dave. They can get you some product for sure. We definitely have a recording of this as well. So we have it in Why Organo Live right now. And those of you in Christy and Dave's community, we're getting the recording. We will upload it in their community as well, so everyone can review all the information, Dr. Bob, through our way. It's dense, and it is science, and it is published medical research facts, which is what I love. Turning it back to you, Bob.
Yeah, I'm going to put you on hold, because I actually would suggest let's do this again next week. And we'll set our Zoom settings. We had so many people come on that didn't know they were muted. I understand frustration, and sometimes if I'm frustrated with something, I might say something I didn't want to have recorded, but that went out to the world. So, whoever got frustrated, hey, sorry about that, bud. But next week we'll get it so people can't come on, live, and we'll record it again. Would you like to do that? So Dave and Christy, I'll ask you that you and Diane, how about we do the same thing next week, same time? And by the way, if you're on here and you know someone that would benefit from this information, and I'll tell you what, I don't know anybody that wouldn't benefit from this information, invite them. We have a 500 capacity on Zoom, and we'll record it and we'll play it. The world needs all the help that it can get. So anything else before we wrap up? If not, I'm going to finish with 4 questions. First question is why? Why'd you take the time to join us tonight? There's so many other things you could do. Second question is the answer to the first. Why not? Why not learn about something that has proven benefit over millennia, thousands of years, tons of published studies, no known toxicity, and a ton of synergy? Third question, why not you? Someone's going to say, this makes sense. I want those benefits. And the final question is, why not now? So the longer you wait to act on information, the least likely you are. Whoever invited you to this Zoom, get back to them and let them know, are you interested in trying this amazing combination? Of course, where it's legal, right? I do CBD here in Texas, and it's amazing. THC, not yet legal here, but I'll tell you what, it ought to be. So with that said, we'll do it again next week. Good night all, and God bless. And thank you again, Christy and Dave, for pointing me in a really powerful direction. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bob. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.